In my last video, I ranked all 11 of Nick Walker's pro show physiques, from his pro debut at the 2020 Chicago Pro all the way to the 2026 Arnold Classic. If you haven't seen that video yet, you can check it out in the description. But once I got down to the top 5, I realized just how difficult it was to separate them. These weren't just 5 great physiques. They were 5 versions that each had a legitimate argument for being his best ever. So instead of simply ranking them, I wanted to take a much closer look. In this video, we're going to compare Nick's 2021 Arnold Classic, 2022 Olympia, 2023 Arnold Classic, 2025 Pittsburgh Pro, and 2026 Arnold Classic physique side by side, pose by pose, to determine which version was actually the best. Let's get started. Front double biceps, and first of all, we can notice the evolution of his midsection. Unfortunately, it's been a regressive evolution. At the far left, with that famous 2021 Arnold Classic win, he displays his best taper. Then, as we move through the years, his waist gradually becomes thicker, and by the far right at the 2026 Arnold Classic, his midsection looks noticeably more bloated. The other major aspect for Nick in the front poses is leg size, and here we see the exact opposite trend. His 2021 Arnold version clearly has the weakest legs of the 5, but they progressively improve year after year. Based on the footage we're using, I'd actually say his best quads are at the 2026 Arnold Classic, with the 2023 Arnold Classic being right there as well. What's interesting is that the 2023 Arnold version sits literally in the middle of this lineup, but also seems to strike the perfect balance between a tight waist and massive quads. The same argument could also be made for the 2022 Olympia. For me, those are clearly the top 2 versions in this pose. I know many people would still pick the 2021 Arnold because of the upper body, and that's completely understandable. But compared to the other 4 versions, the lower body simply isn't on the same level. So based on this first pose alone, I'd place the 2022 Olympia and the 2023 Arnold in the top tier, followed by the 2021 Arnold in the second tier. Then, in the final tier, I'd have his more recent Pittsburgh Pro and 2026 Arnold Classic versions. Even though they're more muscular overall and feature bigger legs, the midsection ultimately holds them back. If I had to rank them from best to worst in this pose, I'd go with the 2023 Arnold Classic in first place, while the 2026 Arnold Classic comes in last. Front lat spread, and normally the same 2 major criteria from the front double biceps should apply here as well for Nick, namely the midsection and leg size. However, in the front lat spread, he has tried many different execution variations over the years, since this was and still is his weakest pose. In the later years, he seems to have found the execution that best suits his frame, as we can see in his 2 most recent versions. Because of that, I would actually have the 2025 Pittsburgh Pro and the 2026 Arnold Classic in the top tier this time, followed by the 2022 Olympia and the 2023 Arnold Classic in the second tier, while the 2021 Arnold Classic falls into last place. That is one of the worst looks Nick has ever had in this pose, if not the worst. And comparing the Pittsburgh Pro to the 2026 Arnold Classic, I actually think Pittsburgh is at a slight disadvantage because of the footage we're using. The legs should look more or less the same in both shows, but the midsection was indeed slightly better in Pittsburgh. So I would have the 2025 Pittsburgh Pro in first, the 2026 Arnold Classic in second, and the rest of the ranking exactly as you can see it displayed. Side chest is next, and in this pose I want to focus on the only issue Nick Walker has ever had here, namely chest thickness. Everything else is world class for him. He's got the arms, the overall thickness, the polish, and the side leg, but his flatter chest has always been one of the main criticisms of this pose. And if we're looking strictly at chest thickness, I believe the 2023 Arnold Classic version was indeed the weakest. His chest really appears flat there. I know this was actually one of the main arguments against Nick Walker winning that show, at least according to one of his competitors' coaches, Chris Acito. Back to the comparison, at least based on these pictures, it looks like the first 2 versions are the best when it comes to chest thickness. But again, they're also the least impressive if we look at the side leg. Now, shadows and the quality of the footage can definitely influence how a muscle group appears, but pictures and footage like these are the only way we can make this comparison. And don't tell me that if you attended all these shows over a span of 5 years, you would remember every single detail more accurately than what you're seeing here, because that's just straight up BS. All things considered, I would put the 2022 Olympia in first when it comes to chest thickness, while the latest two versions stand out for their overall thickness, especially from the waist down. Those three make up my first tier, with the 2021 Arnold Classic and the 2023 Arnold Classic falling into the second tier for this pose. As for my complete ranking, it's exactly as you see it displayed. Back double biceps, and it's obvious that the progress Nick made over the years is clearly visible in this pose. The last two versions, from the 2025 Pittsburgh Pro and the 2026 Arnold Classic, are comfortably ahead of the rest, followed by the 2022 Olympia and the 2023 Arnold Classic in the next tier, with the 2021 Arnold Classic once again falling into the last tier. I know the 2021 Arnold holds a lot of sentimental value for many Nick Walker fans, including Nick himself, but as you can clearly see, it simply doesn't stand a chance from the back. It has the weakest back development of the five, and by far, the weakest lower body as well. The Pittsburgh Pro version seems to be the best overall, but once again, lighting and shadows could play a small role when comparing it to the 2026 Arnold Classic. Still, based on the material we're using, I have the 2025 Pittsburgh Pro in first, closely followed by the 2026 Arnold Classic. Then comes the 2023 Arnold Classic, the 2022 Olympia, and finally the 2021 Arnold Classic. Honestly, in this pose, the images pretty much speak for themselves. Back lat spread, and from the back we pretty much see the same trend as before. Nick's progress over the years is undeniable, going from a pretty average back lat spread in his early years to arguably one of the very best in the business today. He drastically improved his lower body to the point where it's now one of the best of all time, but at the same time, he also improved his upper body, with his back looking both wider and more complete. In 2021, Nick simply wasn't competitive with the very best in the world in the back lat spread. In 2022, his back was still too narrow and his lower body was still a work in progress compared to what it would eventually become. At the 2023 Arnold Classic, he adopted a new posing strategy, and the improvement was already noticeable. Then, starting with the 2025 Pittsburgh Pro, this became not only one of his best poses, but one of the best back lat spreads in the world. This time, I would actually give the edge to the 2026 Arnold Classic, as the lower body looks slightly more polished, while the difference in the upper body is smaller than it was in the back double biceps. So this is my final ranking for the back lat spread. Side triceps, and once again we can see an evolution. This time mostly in Nick's posing style. The Dorian-esque execution suited his physique quite well, I would say, but we all know that today's judging criteria no longer favor that style of execution. The 2022 execution is actually the weakest for me in this pose. On the other hand, the 2023 Arnold Classic is almost perfect from top to bottom, and ever since then, he has basically kept the same approach, but his waist has never looked quite as good again. It should be mentioned though, that from this angle the regression in his midsection is much less noticeable than it is in the front poses. Still, I think the 2023 Arnold Classic is the clear winner here, followed by the 2025 Pittsburgh Pro and the 2026 Arnold Classic in the next tier, then the 2021 Arnold Classic and finally the 2022 Olympia. His physique was excellent in 2022, but the execution of the pose simply wasn't very inspired that year. Abs and thighs is next, and this is the pose that tells the story of Nick Walker's biggest evolution, or rather, regression. His abs and midsection have unfortunately gone in the wrong direction over the years. His abs looked their best in the 2021 Arnold Classic. In fact, his entire upper body looked its best from the front in 2021. That's really the one area where that iconic version clearly comes out on top. And considering it's the one issue that's preventing him from winning the biggest shows nowadays, it's easy to understand why that version is still so highly regarded. The 2022 Olympia is an interesting case. This footage is indeed taken from a slightly tilted angle, but the way his abs looked at that show was very unique. He had a different approach, crunching much harder into his abs, both here and in the front double biceps. If I remember correctly, I believe he had a different coach for that show instead of Matt Jansen. For many years, this was actually my favorite version of Nick Walker, and it still might be. But specifically in the abs and thighs, I prefer the look from the 2021 Arnold Classic and the 2023 Arnold Classic. So I would have the 2022 Olympia in third place, with the last two shows obviously falling into the final tier. Overall, I think the best look comes from the 2023 Arnold Classic, where both his upper body and lower body were right on point. After that, I'd go with the 2021 Arnold Classic, then the 2022 Olympia, followed by the 2025 Pittsburgh Pro, and finally the 2026 Arnold Classic. And finally the most muscular pose, where to be honest, he looks pretty much the same every single time. The way he performs this pose puts a lot of the emphasis on the lower body, so the 2021 Arnold Classic isn't really at a disadvantage here. And because it's the hands clasped variation, his midsection is also largely hidden. So, since at the end I'm going to take the results from every pose, assign points, and calculate the final ranking, I don't want to distort the outcome with a pose where the differences are basically negligible. Just imagine giving one version 5 points for finishing 5th when it looks almost identical to the version in first place. That's not the purpose of this video. The purpose is to determine Nick Walker's best physique by comparing the 5 best versions of his career. Of course, at times he also hits other variations of the most muscular, and those could certainly be taken into consideration. But when I think of Nick Walker's most muscular, I think the hands clasped variation is the one he should stick with, because in my opinion it's clearly his best. So after adding up all the points, with each placing in every pose receiving its corresponding number of points, where the lower the total the better, this is the final result. In last place we have the 2021 Arnold Classic with 28 points. Unfortunately, despite having an incredible upper body, it simply wasn't competitive because of the lower body. In fourth place we have the 2022 Olympia with 22 points. And I have to admit, that's a bit surprising because I actually expected it to finish higher. In third place, we have the 2026 Arnold Classic with 20 points. That leaves us with the top two, the 2023 Arnold Classic and the 2025 Pittsburgh Pro, which honestly feels about right. And the winner is the 2025 Pittsburgh Pro with 17 points. Just 1 point ahead of the 2023 Arnold Classic with 18 points. My initial ranking was actually a bit different in my previous video, but after going through every pose in detail and comparing these 5 physiques side by side, I believe Nick Walker's greatest physique to date is the 2025 Pittsburgh Pro.